Welcome back to the SCP Declined investigation, or rather, quality inquiry. I am Ninetail, technically Jupiter. Yes, it is a math joke. This series spawned from a question: has SCP declined, or was it ever good? In the description and YouTube page, you'll find a playlist of these videos. This is part 2. If you're unfamiliar, SCP, or Secure, Contain, Protect, is a collaborative fiction project started a long time ago. A vast majority of people claim that it began on 4chan's export. I, however, do not trust anon posters, so it is a mystery. As such, this shotgun or minigun approach has its consequences in addition to the lack of a canon or canonical ties between articles. This has caused the question, or rather statement, to crop up that was popular around about 2020 or 2022, it seems, where SCP had some extra scrutiny put on it by the general public, which ultimately led to nothing much happening. It is 2025 now, June 16th, when the script is written, and I asked the question of whether there has been a decline, was there ever one, or is this just another game of internet telephone? If you wish to know the rules of criticism I am working with, check out the first video in the series. I am not repeating them. If this is your first time here, please go and watch the initial intro of that first video to understand my measuring stick. In addition to those rules of criticism, I have a star system that rates my enjoyment of each article. This is not a determiner of quality, but rather a tally system to keep track of my own enjoyment. At the end of this video, the tally will be shown. Lastly, any rewrites will be skipped and ignored unless their original body of text is present. See the previous video as to why. With that out of the way, back to the SCPs. SCP-041, Safe, Thought Broadcasting Patient. 041, male, in a vegetative state, and his anomalous property is, well, broadcasting one's thoughts to everyone else around you. Though given the immobility, the mind of our patient wanders, and he often probes others. However, it has a knock-on effect, like a string tied around a post, stretching tauter and taut. As such, personnel are advised to avoid the patient if they have knowledge or are merely uncomfortable with having their thoughts processed aloud by others. How awkward a situation it must be to mutter something you shouldn't because some veggie would think it'd be funny. No notes, 3 out of 5. SCP-042, Safe. This has been rewritten, as such, it will be skipped. SCP-043, Safe. A vinyl copy of the White Album. The record has no grooves, and upon reaching the 29th track, instead of playing the last song, the disc will begin to faintly breathe. Seemingly sentient, it possesses profound knowledge of the music industry, music theory, and of a variety of otherwise unknown musical artists. However, it refuses to talk about the Beatles. I concur, vinyl disc, the Beatles are terrible. No notes, 1 out of 5. SCP-044, Safe. World War II era molecular fission cannon. Violation of the laws of thermodynamics and Nazi wonder weapons aside, this is amusing. A giant artillery piece, anomalous of course, its mechanisms do nothing and you can load anything in it and fire it, to devastating effect depending on what you shoved in it and how long it has rested within. The only note is the redaction on the energy conversion. I understand the document format would not state it outright for security reasons, if anything, and I find it an effective use of the redaction. It, well, redacts a very important detail that won't give someone a bright idea. Ignoring that they'd have to figure out how to aim such a large piece of equipment via train and transport it through said means, but to each his, her, or their own. 3 out of 5. SCP-045, Safe, Atmospheric Converter. This is a rewrite, however a note has been deemed necessary. The scientific document format is both a blessing and a curse, and I am fully showing the back of my head here, but the amount of chemistry and inherent knowledge required to understand this SCP is a bit mind-boggling. Am I reading an anomalous object or getting some chemistry reminders? Either way, and I thought C-Block was bad with teaching me new words. This is a complaint, not really a criticism. A brief mention over. SCP-046, Euclid, Predatory Hollybush. Says what it does on the tin. Found in Kentucky. This horrid conglomeration of greenery will lure in the mentally unwell or those afflicted by a life-threatening disease, often through dreams or compulsion. After one is lured, you shall be lured into a peaceful state and infected and promptly rotted to the bone. The hollybush is much like a Venus flytrap, beautiful and fascinating, but once it has you within its jaws, snap! And you are being decomposed for its sustenance. I had a criticism mainly leveled at its mimetic effects, basically meaning knowledge of it makes one want to find it, but after a reread and consideration of how this SCP works, it became null. As such, no notes. 4 out of 5. SCP-047, Keter, Microbial Mutagen. A rusted and further decaying gas tank when exposed to air, which releases a mutagenic gas, which, surprisingly, does not affect humans in the traditional way, but instead prokaryotes. Microbiota. Through this, it alters the bacteria or whatever is present and makes it deadlier. While that is a bit of a lie, it doesn't make things deadlier, more contagious. And death is more a side effect as the disease attacks the body. It seems to favor mutating things towards skin decay and thus exposure to the elements, with things like sepsis being the biggest killer. And yes, it can affect already deadly viruses and make them more deadly by increasing their transmission rate. Hence the classification. I was on the fence initially, given the concept, but thankfully the entire thing has a neat little bow to tie it all together. The addendum, or rather Yersinia report, was supposed to be a garnish. However, I feel it would be better removed and the 3 bacteria involved in a containment breach to take its place front and center. 2 out of 5. SCP-048. A meta-joke. The cursed SCP number. 048 is a joke, not in the classification sense, but rather an in-community superstition that whomever writes something related to SCP-048 or try to make something of it, it will suck. This is an insult to those who write, and I can tell it's a community filter. Those who invoke the name of it use it as a badge to keep other community members in line with fear of ridicule and deletion of their work. I cast judgment, a tool for a bitch. Don't mince words and be honest with people when you are giving them criticism or just telling them you don't like something. This gets no rating, and my only proper criticism is that it should be segmented to being unknown, i.e. inaccessible or unaccessible, and remain that way. SCP-049. Euclid. The Plague Doctor has been rewritten. I do have criticism, and that is the layout of the page differentiating itself from the rest of the site, which thus far has had a standard of how things are written and how they are formatted. 049, the Plague Doctor, by any other name, shouldn't be excluded, and neither should popularity on the site or external sources affect it. I do not care how popular you think you are or are quoted to be. Rules and standards should still apply. And again, I am seeing already established authors swing around their old guard weight and do not like seeing that, but I shall still my tongue on that matter for the time being. The layout is ugly, and whilst the audio tracks done are nice by those who, read them aloud on YouTube and then allow them to be on the site, I feel it's unfair to give special treatment and then leave the other SCPs, boring or not, to the wayside. It speaks of favoritism. SCP-050. Euclid, to the cleverest. A small statue of a primate reading a book, 1 foot tall, 30 centimeters, and it follows whoever is the smartest as its owner, in quotes. Whilst it follows the subject, it cleans, empties out trash and such, but also plays pranks and lays traps for its owner, to test their smarts, one might say. It is somewhat impossible to contain, and one must deal with it should it be in their care. Don't try and destroy it though, it'll make the traps worse. No notes, however, a new marking, -B for Dr. Bright. This will be important for later. A narrative tool, one might say. SCP-051. Safe. Japanese obstetrical model, a midwifery. An anatomically accurate model of a human female carved from iron and with Asian features. The stomach area is fully removable and within a fetus rests. Its umbilical cord, a piece of leather. Pregnant women who touch or interact with the object will suffer a miscarriage, and children who are properly born will have horrific birth defects. Obstetrics is the study of midwifery, by the by, of medicine and care for women during and after pregnancy. That isn't in the SCP article, that is just the definition and the word of the week. Isn't that fascinating, My only note is one of positivity. I appreciate that during this testing, and this is partially for the addendums and the mental health examinations and subsequent actions the Foundation took and how cruel it is, it nails the sense that the Foundation is neither good nor bad, but utilitarian and focused on the job or task at hand. 5 out of 5. SCP-052. Euclid. Time-traveling train. It is self-explanatory, taking the midnight train going anywhere. Sometimes to 1980, other times to 2204. It's simple, but then it fumbles. How? It mentions other realities and opens up a box of worms for itself. No, you cannot get away with saying something like time stream. We all know what you mean. I understand the one to add a bit of pizzazz, and why not rope an alternate reality, because time travel and the butterfly effect go hand in hand most of the time. However, then the question becomes, how far can you take this? And it quickly spirals out of control, like a fusion reaction, and before you know it, kaboom. Still, it is serviceable. 1 out of 5. SCP-053. Euclid. Young girl. A child, girl, 3 years of age. Those who remain in the presence, 10 minutes or so, will then become agitated and try to harm 053. That is, if no one else is present, in which case they'll kill the people around them first and then the child, or attempt to. After doing harm to the child, the attacker will die and 053 will simply not care, nor know of what happened. However, they become cagey once asked, but it's a 3-year-old child, and the concept of death is probably unfathomable to them, and probably language as well. Unkillable child. It's simple. I've got nothing to add. Just a bit bland. 0 out of 5. SCP-054. Safe. This is a read-write. Skipped. SCP-055. Keter. Unknown. It is unfathomable. Literally. It shall purge all knowledge of itself from the mind, an anti-meme. This is a dud to me because it requires the understanding of memetics as an idea and its principles. Yes, the funny white-haired Sands of Time guy from that game everybody likes quoting. Memes. The DNA of the soul. I do appreciate how it builds up the gusto, and the idea of 055's classification as the Keter rating does make sense. It is contained, but if you can't really remember that it exists, nor why you have a supposedly empty container, that will lead to all sorts of disasters. A cool concept, good justification, but steps into the rake at the last moment. 0 out of 5. SCP-056. Euclid. A beautiful person. A being capable of changing itself to pretty much anything, but has a mean streak and thinks it's above everybody else, and often will use this to agitate and make people upset. It needs somebody to observe in order for it to manifest properly. If it wants to change, everyone will need to lose sight of it first. No matter what, it will be better than you in some way. It also requested access to the internet for sycophants. The request was denied. Gregory House much? No notes. 2 out of 5. SCP-057. Safe. The Daily Grind, a massive structure referred to as an artifact which upon a human entering a specified chamber, the door will lock and the pillows within will begin to chase the human until they are dead and or crushed. My only criticism, if you could even consider it that, would be the redactions. It feels unnecessary to have multiple when only one would suffice. Several meters below, redacted. On the date, redacted. You can remove these two and retain the 2 redacted things. It seems trigger happy, but otherwise it's pretty solid. 3 out of 5. SCP-058. Keter, the Heart of Darkness. A bovine heart, bony tendril legs, and 1 sharp bony tail, it is aggressive, and will kill pretty much anything, even while sedated and seemingly unable to attack. It has a voice and quotes something or the other, not to be confused with the Liver of Light. Originally, I wish to end it here, but there is a link to the Drooling Path hub. This is a Tales hub, as I've been told by the site, and whilst I also intended to go through it, I have decided against it after completing my reading of The Works Within. Written by Cothodora Strix, the story follows one Dr. Conrad Scott, very funny, and his slow descent into obsession and madness. This isn't really a proper criticism, more taste-oriented, but the entirety of this additional bit of fiction is boring. It barely amounts to even fan-fiction levels of enjoyment. I'm a person of low-quality taste. You can give me anything to read and I will have some sense of enjoyment. I love reading other people's stuff. I can read just about everything and have a modicum of enjoyment, but going through each entry was a slog. Lastly, the reviews are the most participation star-worded compliments I have seen since fanfiction.net. I have nothing positive or negative to say. This one is a loss. 0 out of 5. SCP-059. Radioactive Mineral. Keter. This has been rewritten. Skipped. SCP-060. Keter. Infernal Occult Skeleton. A tree grove made of 17 white oak trees in Minnesota. These trees do grow, watched by satellite, and perchance some of the plant matter is set alight, and then a skeleton appears. An infernal, blustering inferno which seeks to do harm and create destruction wherever it walks. It kills people, burns them, because it is 1,500 degrees Celsius, 2,730 Fahrenheit for those in America. Talk about bad to the bone. The concept, good. The exact measurements of 20 grams of plant material needing to be burnt is unnecessary and would do better being a more passive threat. Extend the area to be easily flammable, and that is why containment is necessary. Otherwise, the skeleton will appear. And it would build up more suspense if you didn't know how much you needed to burn in order to summon it. If you choose to, that is. I understand that the exact gram amount is more oriented towards the document format, as it is scientific document, well, formatation. but it seems better suited towards a snowball implication that a repeat burning would be the goal of 060, and as such it would have more chances to emerge as you put one fire out, even if only a single instance at a time. As such, a tidbit of malinfo which states that it is random whether 060 alpha, the skeleton, appears when some plant matter of 060 is burnt would help improve it. Also, the different terms, that being referring to the skeleton as 060 alpha instead of 060-1, seems strange and not in following standard. I understand the reason, that being to differentiate itself. I, however, do find it unnecessary and more I wish to stand out rather than meaningful change. And yes, it can only manifest once. Only one skeleton at a time. Talk about deflation in terms of evil skeletons. Otherwise, 4 out of 5. SCP-061. Safe. Auditory mind control. It says what it does on the tin. The Foundation created an anomalous program on a CD-ROM. For Tail, show an image on screen of what a CD-ROM is, in order to counteract other auditory disturbances and have a way to, again, counteract things that may control the mind. I'm sure this won't be used for nefarious purposes. 0 out of 5. SCP-062. Euclid. Rewritten, as such, avoided. SCP-063. Safe. The world's best toothbrush. First, it is misspelled and pronounced wrong on purpose. Second, it can cleanse away any dead organic or inorganic material, the bristles being the main strongest at doing this, of course. Said cleaning expunges the dead organic matter or inorganic matter from existence. It is an effective toothbrush or toothbrush. No notes. 3 out of 5. SCP-064. Safe. Flawed von Neumann structure. It is a brick, terracotta brick in specific. Well, technically it's mostly silicone, but it looks like a terracotta brick. If left in an open space, it'll begin to make more of itself and take shape, or at least try to, of a 12-point star, a dodecagram, if memory serves right, though I can't pronounce it right, of course. However it does this is not really understood. We have theories, of course, and the prevailing one is that it works similar to a fungus. The fungus brick. Mushroom. At a certain point, the propagation will stop and then collapse in on itself, or the original brick can be removed, and it will do much the same. It also shall stop itself from propagating if something gets in the way and weighs more than 10 kilograms, or itself weighs more than 10 kilograms. Someone's going to have to explain to me how this relates to a von Neumann structure, but cool fungus brick, HK-016, 2 out of 5 stars. SCP-065, Euclid, destroyed organic catalyst. A family's farm, once yielding fields great, now all but a hostile dome of life-altering effects. It wasn't always like this, but the Global Occult Coalition, or GOC for short, stop giggling, destroyed an artifact that one of the family members brought home. They bought it in hopes to increase the yield of their potential crops, and the GOC, or GOC, decided that this wasn't to be. As such, they unleashed something even worse upon the world and made an area uninhabitable. That which steps into the dome is beset by changes and rather quickly dies as they either come undone or mutate into something not capable of sustaining itself. Annihilation, the book. Reference? Probably not, but this was made around 2010-ish, one of the few books I remember reading when I was younger. Oh well. 3 out of 5. SCP-066, Euclid, Eric's Toy, rewritten, as per the laws I have set, skipped. However, a little bit, Euclid impetus. Just stick with Euclid, let's not be fancy. Also, the rewrite was done by... Communism will win? Well, that's certainly a name choice. SCP-067, Safe, the artist's pen. A fountain pen capable of putting pen to paper and transcribing one's life experiences onto paper, regardless if the person has forgotten it or remembered. It also makes otherwise uncreative people creative and makes them create artistic pieces. What it makes seems completely randomized, at least in terms of art. However, it writes the biographies from what one might consider the soul. They also gave it to a macaque. It gave it a panic attack. 4 out of 5 stars. SCP-068, Safe, the wire figure. A metallic wire figure in the same vein as a child's drawing of a person, very basic but capable of movement, and when a jolt of electricity is ran through it, it animates. Once up and about, it'll try to find the metal to propagate itself, and depending on the material of the copy, say brass, iron, steel, etc., it'll be able to dig through materials, but similarly be unable to, depending on the material it is made of. At a certain point, they'll form into a larger whole and then repeat the process until it cannot be done anymore. Once the materials are finished, it'll go dormant, and then it is recommended to melt down the materials the figures were made from. Oh, and for good measure, the figurines are indestructible. Had me in the first half, fell off at the end. Being invincible? not really necessary. Otherwise, it's alright. 2 out of 5. SCP-069. Second chance. Safe. Die in the presence of this SCP, all you need is your body, a friend, and you'll be up in no time. Well, you won't have any of your memories, and any mention of your death might trigger a deep-set wrongness because you lack a soul, but hey, you're born anew. The task force, being designated, or rather nicknamed, Body Snatchers, is cute, but I feel it silly. To each their own in this instance. However, that's it. 1 out of 5. SCP-070. Safe. Iron Wings. A man of Native American origin, specifically the Kiowa tribe, I hope I pronounced that right, with, well, iron wings. He can't control them, and they have a mind of their own. Rusted, almost flimsy, but more than capable of harming someone, as they are somehow strong as steel despite their appearances. Nothing too shabby. Metal wings that are alive and attached to a guy. 3 out of 5 stars. And that brings us to the end of this video. Tally it up, 5-tail. Look at that. Impressive, isn't it? This video was shorter because my girlfriend told me that doing it in pairs of 30 is easier on me. I trust her judgment. Thank you for your patronage. Subscribe, like, leave a comment, tell me I'm an idiot or not. I shall see you later.